Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter at Real Bird Lawyer, bird law expert on Blue Sky. And here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Witt on Twitter. IASIC, IASICK. That stands for It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom on Blue Sky. And we're here on New Year's Eve. We took a little time off to celebrate Christmas, celebrate the Chiefs, celebrate us a little bit. And we are here. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. It's New Year's Eve, and we got all the important football ahead of us. So, no time better than right now to be a Chiefs fan.
Before we get into the show, we have to update everybody on what happened in the Listener League. And I don't know what happened in the Listener Leagues because I actually deleted the Sleeper app, which is what we use for our fantasy leagues, from my phone on Sunday night for no reason at all. And I don't know who won. So I'm actually going to go just drink a bottle of tequila straight while Taylor updates everybody on what happened. And congratulations to whoever won. I'm sure you absolutely deserved it. But I will be back in just a little bit, and then we'll continue the program.
All right. So we normally, of course, want to give as much love as we can to all of the listeners who participated with us. Thank you, everybody, for doing the Cutthroat League, the Redraft League, the Dynasty League. All had a lot of fun, a lot of good seasons out of some people. Austin and I had pretty rough years for two exactly polar opposite reasons. I didn't make any noise in any of the leagues, and that also included my two big personal leagues that I'm in. So I had a really rough year fantasy wise, like on the whole. But Austin had the opposite type of rough year, which is really, really good regular seasons and then didn't work out in the playoffs. Of course, he made 29 consecutive cut weeks, which was unbelievable in the Cutthroat League and something that I can't imagine we will ever see duplicated. However, that did not include the league championship, the biggest game, biggest 2 weeks of them all. He and Roscoe 836. Shout out Roscoe. Had a 2 week Super Bowl, and I mean Roscoe took it to him. He had really, really good performances both weeks. In week 16, Roscoe got him 227 to 199, and then in this last week, Austin did win by 4 points, 217 to 213. So both of them were completely loaded, but that aggregate means that Roscoe is our 2024 Cutthroat League champion. Congrats to Roscoe. That was a really, really hard job dethroning the champ. Austin had Lamar, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow as his three quarterbacks. So, Roscoe countered with Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold, which, as careers go, might not be, the right call, but they got it done this week. Jaden had 37, Baker had 35, and Darnold had 27. Burrow had 37, Lamar had 30, but Josh Allen, I think, was probably the big disappointment for Austin this week. He only had 24 points. So congrats to Roscoe. Thank you to everybody for playing the Cutthroat League. That's our bread and butter, most fun league where we start out with 16 people and then lowest score gets eliminated until there's just one team left. So we'll be doing another round of that next year, and everyone who was in it this year has first dibs to continue it next year. But if anybody bows out, then of course we will open up the invites to other people. So good job there. And then of course our redraft and dynasty leagues where we have the promotions in the redraft and the relegation in dynasty. There's a lot of good drama in that. In the redraft league, had a great Super Bowl between BPSAE and Chief 270. Came down to the last drive of the last Monday night game, and BPSAE won by 2 points, 159.78 to 157.68. So congratulations to BPSAE. I don't know, I can't really say a word there phonetically, Bipsay or something, but that was a great performance there, and Chief 270 put up a really, really good fight. They were down to, Gibbs. BPSAE had Gibbs and Amon Ra last night, and they were awesome, man. They definitely got the job done. But Chief 270 had Kittle, and Kittle put up 18, so he, that's why it came down to the wire, because anybody could have scored there and won. So congrats there, and then of course congratulations to Roscoe. The Cutthroat winner was also the #1 scoring team in the redraft league. So Roscoe had himself a heck of a season. He won the most points in redraft and the automatic promotion to the Dynasty League. So next year, Roscoe and BPSAE are going to join us in the Dynasty League. So now we go over to the Dynasty League. Of course, This is another Super Bowl loss for Austin. He was going up against our guy Dennis DP Owens J Kaka in the Dynasty League Super Bowl, and I mean Dennis just was unstoppable this week. He had 177 out of his team to Austin's 131, so wasn't really that dramatic in this one. Jaden Daniels again for Dennis put up 37, and then Bucky Irving had 28. T. Higgins had 37. Mike Evans had 27. He was all over the place. Had a great season. Dennis also was the number one scoring team in Dynasty, so he came back with a big chunk of cash for himself as well. So congratulations to Dennis. But then, of course, because we have promotion in Dynasty, I mean in redraft, that means Dynasty does have to have relegation. A lot of talk in our league this year about kind of how relegation works and who should be relegated. The Constitution says that the lowest scoring team in the regular season gets relegated, and that was Osho Casey Jared, who has been a great player for us and had a 7-7 record and was the 7th seed, but he was the lowest output of the year. And then the second relegation should go typically to the loser of the toilet bowl, which is the opposite of the playoffs, where when you lose the bottom half of the league, if you lose, you go on to the next round. And our stipulation was that if the same player gets worse scoring team and loses the toilet bowl, that the second relegation goes to the 11th scoring team of the year, which was our guy Casey Sortorican. Shout out to both Kaka to Sortorican and Jared for being birds of war and hanging with us. And so they'll go down to the redraft league next year and try and win back up and get back into the Dynasty League. So that's the breakdown of the fantasy leagues. Again, thank you to everybody for participating. We had a ton of fun with everybody. Everybody's all, paid in and loved it and had a great time, seems like. So we'll keep it going next year. And of course, I'll try and be better. Try and maybe make a little playoff run this year. And maybe next year, Austin can get a ring and be part of this recap with you guys. So now back to the show.
We got a great show for you guys today. We've got news. We have no game to preview this week because Chiefs have a bye, so they're not going to play anybody important. So instead, we will talk about what is happening in the AFC. We, of course, will recap the Chiefs' 29-10 defeat of the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Day. And next week, come back, of course, because we will be starting our playoff coverage, and we'll be joined by our dear friend Randy Giserli. You know him, you love him. We know him, we love him. But first, news. So normally we talk about the injuries as they pertain to the next game that the Chiefs are playing in, which is a game that they're playing in this Sunday at Denver. But we don't have to talk about the Chiefs injury report for this week because the Chiefs are not going to play anyone important this week. No offense to the guys that are going to be on the field on Sunday. You're very important too. Everybody is important, but Chris Jones is not going to play. Travis Kelce is not going to play. Patrick Mahomes is not going to play. Yeah, I'm assuming Nuke Hopkins and Hollywood Brown are not going to play. The Chiefs are they have the luxury of sitting everyone. They are going to have a 24 days off. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, next week, rest versus rest, etc. But the Chiefs are not going to be playing anybody of import in this game on Sunday. So let's talk about kind of where the Chiefs sit coming out of that game on Christmas Day over the Steelers. Jack Cochran broke his ankle in that game. He will be out for the year. He leads the Chiefs in special team snaps this year, has played really pretty well. So this is a significant loss, as significant a loss as you can have on special teams outside of your actual specialists, kicker and long snapper. Linebacker Blake Lynch elevated to the active roster to replace him. Kind of a bummer.
Yeah, special teams are going to be important down the stretch. They tend to go, I don't want to say unnoticed, but the nuance of special teams is kind of hard to pick up as a fan, and unless you're really, really, digging into it. And so I don't really know how much Jack Cochran has meant to the special teams other than he's played a lot and now he's not going to play. So hopefully the Chiefs don't really miss that presence as much as they could. But, injuries, they suck no matter who it is. Anytime your team is tested with depth, that's going to be a challenge. And, fortunately, they've got some time to get everybody on the same page and working on the same stuff before the games actually matter. But, if there's a big playoffs special teams return or something like that, we can maybe look back and wonder if Jack Cochran might have been the difference maker or not.
Let's hope not. And the Chiefs do have someone that at one point was being considered for head coaching spots and has been historically regarded as a Hall of Fame special teams coach. So Dave Toub earned that paycheck. Jawan Taylor, Chiefs right tackle, and Chris Jones, defensive tackle, were both questionable with knee and calf injuries. Obviously, the Chiefs just came off of a 3 games in 11 days stretch. Thanks a lot, Roger, for that. Suffered those injuries against the Texans on Saturday, and then the Chiefs had to turn around and play on Wednesday. So Jawan Taylor was able to go and played the entire game. So he presumably is going to be healthy when the Chiefs next take the field in a game that matters. And Chris Jones traveled with the team with that calf injury, did not play, but obviously is going to have 24 days between that game and the Chiefs' next game that matters in the playoffs. So all indications are he should be good to go. And obviously, after he came out of the game against the Texans, we all certainly feared the worst. And it sounds like the health of these two extremely critical players is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, got to get those big boys healthy. And I mean, what a time to have not only the 2 weeks that the Chiefs are going to have, but also the mini bye, the Wednesday through Sunday
Right.
that they, got off. I mean, the days between Christmas Day and the 18th or 19th of January is a long stretch. And, if you're going to have some guys coming back from injuries, I mean, working on injuries, not necessarily, figuring out if they're going to be able to be healthy for the playoffs and stuff. That's the time to do it. So, yeah, could not have timed this any better for the Chiefs as far as getting healthy.
I didn't even put this in the rundown for the show, but you reminded me that Patrick Mahomes, of course, is dealing with an
Of
injury.
course.
He didn't miss any time, so we
No,
sort of, I mean, at this point, I
he
just
wasn't even
assumed
on
that,
the injury report
yeah,
for the Steelers
exactly.
game.
He wasn't on the injury report. He didn't look hurt, but it can't hurt for him to have 24 days to rest up that ankle. And
Hmm.
I don't want to jinx it, but this could be the illusory Patrick Mahomes is fully healthy for the playoffs run for the Chiefs, which almost never happens.
Yeah.
It's very tough. And the Chiefs only accomplish it a handful of times, but if he's a full go, that'll be great. Andy Reid says there's a chance that McCole Hardman can return from the IR for the postseason. Does that do anything for you, McCole? Getting him back?
Yeah. Oh, you mean the guy that caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl?
Oh yeah,
Right?
he did do that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It'll be better to have him back than not.
He's had some moments this year, and obviously the Chiefs have been without him for a while. But this is sort of, we've talked about this. It feels like a number of times over the years with McCall Hardman, but the Chiefs are in such a good spot right now. I feel bad even saying this into the air, and I'm not a person that believes in jinxes other than what I do on Twitter, which I
Right.
have taken fully to believe in. But I mean, McCole he's the fourth guy or the fifth guy, really, if you count Travis Kelce. And I mean, you could even put Noah Gray in there. We were talking about a guy that's like sixth or seventh on the team in terms of target priority, and that really is a niche that he can settle into, and has excelled in the past. He doesn't have to do too much, so it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how he slots in for the playoffs. And then finally, we have Andy with an update on cornerback Jalen Watson, who, of course, has been out since October 20th with a broken ankle. Andy says he could, quote, potentially return. He did say that it might be a stretch, which, you know, there's just no way to interpret what that means with Andy
No,
Reid,
no. Well, there's really no way to
potentially, but
interpret
it might be a
anything that
stretch.
Andy Reid says.
It's very true. It's very true. What we know is we've seen videos of Watson working out in the team facility. He seems to be running well, probably pretty close to full speed. We have not seen, or at least I have not seen, any videos of him cutting yet, which what I would assume would be kind of the last step, recovering from an ankle injury, being able to cut and feeling confident in your ability to cut, at full speed on the football field. But again, I mean, this could not have come, the mini buy and then getting the actual buy and having
Hmm.
a game off and then a buy and a mini buy, like all three of those things coming together couldn't have come at a better time for Jalen Watson, who, I mean, before the last 2 weeks, the Chiefs defense looked significantly worse without.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We've seen what happened to this defense when Jalen Watson was not on there. And I mean, yeah, you said it. It's been worse. And I don't know, an ankle injury for a cornerback, it does kind of feel like that's a pretty vital part of what they
Yeah,
do.
yeah, definitely.
So I don't know if Jalen Watson, just because he would be able to play, I'm sure he hasn't been taking a ton of live reps considering he can't run on that ankle. It's not like one of those injuries where you could still do a lot of the same stuff you could do. You just can't play the game. Um, so, I mean, I don't know. It would all be up to the coaches. And if they feel like he's effective or if they feel like he's able to help the team, then obviously his activation would be a big, big boon for the defense. But, they've been getting by without him. It hasn't been the prettiest, but I don't think anybody in Chiefs Kingdom is sitting here saying if we don't have Jalen Watson, we're not going to be able to go win playoff games, right? Like that's
Right.
he's a part of it, but they've been able to hold. They will talk about it, but they held the Steelers to 10 points and they held the Texans down, and I mean they've looked fine recently. Everything's looked great recently. So with that being considered, if Jalen Watson can come back, then we welcome him, but we'll go without him.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to keep in mind too that obviously, if the Chiefs are able to make a deep playoff run, if he's not able to come back in 2 weeks, he might be able to
Yeah,
come back in a
good
month.
point. Good
And
point.
I mean, the Super Bowl is still 6 weeks away.
Yeah.
It's still a possibility that he could recover in that time frame. So it'll be interesting to see if we're able to get him back. That's going to kind of do it for the news and for the injuries. We got a little bit of downtime here, which means we can bring back a segment that we have not used in a little bit of a while, which is what is
Is happening.
happening with the AFC playoff picture. What is happening with the AFC playoff picture? We have 6 teams in the AFC that have clinched a playoff spot with 1 week left in the regular season. The Chiefs, of course, are locked and loaded as the 1 seed. The Bills, with their win over the Jets, are locked in as the 2 seed. The Ravens do still need to play in the last week of the regular season. They need to play and win their final game to secure the AFC North, to win the AFC North and take that number 3 seed. If they lose and the Steelers win, the Steelers are the 3 seed, and the Steelers could be as low as the 6th seed, as high as the 3. So they still have quite a bit of flex as to where they could land. The Texans locked into the 4 seed as the winner of the putrid AFC South, perennially putrid AFC
Yeah.
South, I should say.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they will play the 5 seed, which will either be the Steelers. If the Steelers finish with the same or better record than the Chargers, they have the tiebreaker. Or if the Steelers lose and the Chargers win, the Chargers would be the 5, and then the Steelers would be the 6 seed. So, how are you feeling about these first 6 teams before we get to that 7th spot in the AFC?
I think there's a clear delineation between the Bills and Ravens and everyone else. I mean, as far as opponents go, clearly the Chiefs are.
Yeah, I mean they're the number
Yeah,
one
they're
seed
the
for a
Chiefs.
reason.
The Chiefs is the Chiefs, but I think that the Bills and the Ravens have shown with both their quarterback play and just the general, ability to go win games that those two are going to be formidable playoff opponents. And I think everyone from 4, 5, 6, and whoever gets the 7 seed are lucky to be there, lucky to be, calling themselves a playoff team this year and very beatable and not super scary. I mean, look, it's the NFL. It's every given Sunday. Anybody can beat anybody. We all know that. But as far as like who I'm looking at matchup wise and wondering if the Chiefs, how they're going to do. I mean, look, the guys you just went over are, I mean, especially the 2 teams that the Chiefs just beat, which are right there in the Steelers and Texans. I mean, those teams are about as beatable of a playoff opponent as I've seen in a while for the
Yeah.
Chiefs. They
Yeah.
are very vulnerable. They are very just the Chiefs just looked great against both of them. So they're the 2 juiciest matchups. AFC West we'll talk about, and I don't know how anybody could really be super excited about playing a division rival with everything to lose and nothing really to gain on the line. But
Yeah,
no, yeah,
right.
they're it's an interesting field. It's definitely interesting.
We are definitely rooting for the Ravens to win on Sunday, because if the
Yeah,
Ravens are able to
for
win their
sure.
final game and secure the 3 seed as the AFC North winner, which they should be highly motivated to do, that sets up, a 2-3 matchup in the divisional round where the Chiefs are playing against either the 7th seed, well, I guess the 7th seed, if 7th seed wins,
Yeah.
then the Bills would be out, which would be
Mm-hmm.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But either the Chargers, Steelers, or Texans, while the Bills and Ravens are playing each other in
Yeah.
Buffalo. So that's a really strong scenario for the Chiefs if that comes to pass. And the Ravens, I think are they playing the Browns it's a divisional matchup?
It's Ravens Browns. Yeah, yeah. That's right.
They're playing the Browns, who obviously the Chiefs just played and dominated with a horrible game on offense a couple weeks ago. The Browns are kind of down to their third string quarterback at this point because they don't seem inclined to play Jameis. I mean, the Browns have beaten the Ravens this year, but it
Of
seems
course.
unlikely that the Ravens are gonna are going to let that one go. So, I mean, that would set up a dream scenario for the Chiefs where you have the only two real threats in the AFC facing off against each other in the divisional round, and the Chiefs only have to play one of those teams to get back to the Super Bowl. That
Right.
would be fantastic.
I think
Let's
that's
move
as good of
on.
a field as you could break as you could ask for, right? Like
Hmm.
I can't imagine a better scenario. I've been trying to think about it. Like what could have possibly, other than pitting the two big contenders up against each other and having the Chiefs go after a vulnerable 4 seed or some wildcard teams. It's really interesting to me.
Well, there's only one thing that could really make it better, Taylor, and that I think is worth discussing as part of our discussion of the seventh seed. Of course, the seventh seed is the redheaded stepchild of the NFL playoffs that were added a few years ago as a blatant cash grab to add another playoff game into the mix. And this seventh seed, until I think it was the Packers won as the seventh seed last year, the seventh seed had never advanced past the first round of the playoffs. And this spot is still unsettled. And the reason it's still unsettled, Taylor, is actually quite hilarious. The
Mhm.
Denver Broncos could have clinched a playoff spot 2 weeks ago by beating the Los Angeles Chargers, but they lost that game after blowing a two-score lead, 21-10. Couldn't win that one, couldn't finish it off. Nevertheless, they could have clinched a playoff spot last week on Saturday by beating the Bengals. But we actually just have to get into this one because this team, both of these teams are. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the two most hated NFL teams that for both of us, like this, the top
Yeah,
two on
for
the list,
sure.
Broncos,
Number one
Bengals,
and number two easily. I don't
in
even know who's number one these days.
exactly in some order. But both of these teams totally blew this game multiple times. The Bengals take a 17-10 lead with 11:33 left in the fourth quarter. The teams exchange three and outs, and then the Broncos probably score a 51-yard touchdown on one of the worst defenses in the NFL this year with Marvin Mims to tie the game at 17. The Bengals get the ball back with 8 minutes left. They go on a 7-minute drive to take a 24-17 lead with 129 left in the game. Now, Chase Brown goes down at the one after getting a first down and goes to church mode. And the Bengals could have killed the clock because the Broncos only had one timeout left at that point, could have killed the clock, kicked the field goal like the Chiefs did against the Eagles in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. But Chase Brown actually hurt himself in the process. He twisted his ankle. He couldn't get off the field. So the Bengals have to take a timeout. So now the Bengals can't kill the clock, but they could have killed some clock and
Mm-hmm.
then kicked a field goal because, again, the Broncos only have one timeout left. They could have run a play or two and then kicked and forced the Broncos to burn their last timeout, giving them about 45, 50 seconds left to drive down and kick a game-tying field goal. Bengals don't do that. They actually score on the very next play on a quarterback sneak by Joe Burrow to take a touchdown lead, but give the Broncos just enough time to go back and score the game-tying touchdown with 8 seconds left. All right, so we're in overtime. The Bengals win the toss. Okay, that's great because remember in the regular season, you score a touchdown, the overtime is over. The opponent has no opportunity to respond. You just scored a touchdown against the Broncos defense the previous time you had the ball. You have the ball. The Bengals do 2nd and 7 at the 50, and then Joe Burrow takes back-to-back sacks, and the Bengals are forced to punt. I mean, Joe Cool, he's like the most anti-clutch player in the
Yeah.
league. So now the Broncos only need a field goal to win, Taylor, because the Bengals didn't do anything on their first drive. Instead of kicking a field goal and winning the game, they go 3 and out and they punt the ball back to the Bengals, who now also only need a field goal to win. And guess what? They
What?
drive down into field goal range. They have a 33-yard field goal, which is the same distance as an extra point to win this game. You and I were texting back and forth watching this game, just having a good laugh about everything that had happened. And you said, I bet Cade York is going to York one right into the stands. And
Yeah.
sure enough, that is exactly what he did. He promptly Yorks one straight into the net, gives the ball back to the Broncos, who, once again, all they need to do is go down and kick a field goal. It's not that hard. We've seen the Chiefs do it literally
Not that hard.
dozens of times over the last 5 or 6 years with Patrick Mahomes and Harrison Butker taking care of business. We've seen them do it with 13 seconds left in the game. Doesn't matter. It's not that hard. It's easy to do. Unless you're the Denver Broncos, who once again go 3 and out. They do not get a single first down in the overtime period. They punt the ball back to the Bengals, who finally, on their third try, go down and get the game-winning score. And the Broncos, once again, fail to clinch a playoff spot. Let's unpack this before we move on to the scenarios for the seventh seed.
Sure. I have a question. What do you think about not going for two after the Broncos scored with 8 seconds left to, they kick the extra point to tie it? You're on the
Yes.
road.
I'm glad you
It's
brought this
a
up because I didn't put it in
formidable
my rundown.
offense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
And Sean Payton looked like he wanted to go for it. Like he
Yeah,
had
I
he
mean,
he was looking through his call sheet. He kept the offense on the field for a minute, and then they
right.
called. I guess it must have been a TV timeout or something.
Yeah.
Something happened to sort of delay the play call, and in the interim, the Broncos decided to kick the tying
I
extra point.
I think they were reviewing the touchdown because it was a
Oh,
little
that's right.
close if
That's
Marvin
right.
Mims
That's
had
right.
caught it or not. But, we saw this with the Bucks at Arrowhead. We saw this when they scored with barely any time left and kicked the extra point, and on their side, they never got the ball in overtime. The Chiefs marched right down the field and did what you're supposed to do and score a touchdown. But in this game, you're still going up against Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, who scored the eventual game-winning touchdown, which, by the way, was the first touchdown in overtime history for the Cincinnati Bengals of any kind. So that was,
What?
yeah, they've never, ever, ever scored an overtime touchdown before that. Well, they're the Cincinnati Bengals, so that makes a lot of
Sure.
sense. But I don't know. I definitely always err on the side of the road team going for it. I think the Ravens were very smart if they had scored that Isaiah Likely touchdown to have gone for two against the
Sure.
Chiefs. I
Yeah.
think that anytime A, you're the road team, or B, you consider yourself to be outmatched in the game and probably shouldn't have a tie game at the end of regulation anyway.
Or C, you're going against one of the worst defenses in the NFL.
or you have one play against a bad defense to
Yeah.
beat them and to win the game and to make the playoffs. I mean,
Right. Right.
it's crazy. So I think that was a blown decision by Sean Payton. And then, obviously they've just fallen on their faces. I think they were probably overachieving a little bit at the
Definitely.
beginning of the year. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. And these last couple weeks that they've blown when they've had to have it, that feels more like the Broncos team that we've been accustomed to since 2015. Haven't made the playoffs in 9 years now, and I wonder if they lose to the Chiefs on Sunday, we can talk about that or not. But if they do blow it against the Chiefs and don't make the playoffs, like, how do you keep going with Sean Payton? I'm sure they will, but like that's a pretty rough collapse to the year when you could have clinched it with 3 games to go.
I mean, if you blew an 11-point halftime lead against your division rival to
Yeah,
blow it against the Chargers, and then you blew this game against the Bengals, which again, like you could have just gone for two and ended it in regulation. You had
right.
two chances to go down and kick a field goal in overtime. You weren't able to get a first down. And then if you lose at home in week 18 to Carson Wentz
Yeah,
and the
the
Chiefs backups,
backups.
like not
Yeah.
even just the backup QB,
Uh-huh.
like it's going to
Uh-huh.
be every backup is going to be in this game, except for probably the offensive linemen are going to be out there because you don't usually roll with like an all backup offensive line. And frankly, that sounds downright reckless against the Broncos pass rush. But if you are playing for your playoff lives and you lose 3 straight win and in games, and the last one to the Chiefs backups, who
Mm-hmm.
not that long ago had a 16-game win streak against you,
Yep.
boy, yeah, that would be pretty tough to survive that. Now, I'm sure that he would because Sean Payton
Yeah.
seems to have a very high opinion of himself, and somehow he's able to convince other people also to have a high opinion of him. But man, that would be hard to come back from for sure. So that brings us to the scenarios for this final 7th spot in the AFC for the 3rd straight week. If the Broncos win, they are in the playoffs. That's all they have to do. All they have to do is go out and beat the Chiefs backups at home in week 17. If they can do that, they are in the playoffs. If the Broncos lose and the Dolphins win against the Jets, the Dolphins would be in the playoffs, which kind of snuck up on me. Like, when you're thinking
Yeah.
about these Colts scenarios, the Colts lost, so they're no longer in the picture. The Dolphins?
Yeah.
Surprised by that. But if the Broncos lose and the Dolphins win against the Jets, the Dolphins are in. If the Broncos and Dolphins both lose and the Bengals beat the Steelers, who, by the way, I mean, I assume, I haven't seen the schedule, but I assume the
I have.
Steelers and the Ravens are going to be playing at the same time, right? So the Steelers,
Saturday is actually all AFC North. It's the two
okay.
games, and the first game is Bengals Steelers, and the second game is Ravens
So the Steelers will have
Browns.
to play because there's
Yes.
a chance that the Browns could beat
Yeah.
the Ravens, and
Right.
then I mean, the
Oh,
Steelers would be the 3
I have the
seed.
time swap. Sorry. So Ravens Browns is first, but the Ravens.
Sure, that makes sense.
So if the Ravens beat the Browns, the Steelers will have nothing to play for against the Bengals on Saturday night. They should have switched those. The reason I thought the Bengals
Well,
Steelers went first is because,
except
like you're saying, that makes more sense to
they
me.
do have to still play for the 5 seed though, and the 5 seed is the difference
Yeah,
between playing the Texans and playing the Ravens again. So
you're right.
they're
You're right. So
probably
they'll
playing
still
that
want.
game. They're probably playing that game either way.
Yeah.
And we would expect both of those teams, Steelers and Ravens, both to win those matchups.
Yes,
But the
I
Bengals would
would.
have to beat the Steelers playing
On the road.
for a very significant carrot, which is play the Ravens again or play the Texans, right? Like
Hmm.
if you win, you get to play the Texans, assuming
Hmm.
that Baltimore wins. And if Baltimore loses, if you win, you're the 3 seed. So,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
you want to win that game real bad if you're the Steelers. So Bengals would have to have the Broncos and Dolphins both lose and then beat the Steelers. That is what it would take for the Bengals and Joe Burrow to get into the playoffs. And if everybody loses, Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals, the Broncos would get into the playoffs. So that is your AFC playoff scenario. Do you have a preference out of that final set of possibilities?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I think of all of those games, the outcome that I'm maybe the most confident on in all of them is Dolphins over Jets. The
Yeah,
Jets are a
definitely.
pit of
Sure.
despair right now. They've
Right.
completely given up on Aaron Rodgers. There's really no reason for me to think that the Dolphins can't beat the Jets on the last game of the year, which would eliminate the Bengals if nothing else. And so
Sure. Right.
I don't really see a scenario where the Bengals make it into the playoffs. I really think that either the Bengals aren't going to be able to get it done against the Steelers, or the Dolphins are going to beat the Jets, or the Broncos are going to beat the Chiefs. But one of those is definitely going to happen. So preference wise, it gets interesting, right? Because from a Chiefs perspective, you know, objectively, what the Chiefs should want to happen is whatever opens up the door for them to make the Super Bowl the easiest. That's the only concern. It doesn't really matter who it is or how it happens. It's just however the path can be paved the easiest. So to me, the easiest path is somebody beating the Bills before the Chiefs even have to play them. Now, I'm
Ooh.
not saying that the Chiefs couldn't beat the Bills. They've done it many, 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 many times. But if you're gonna send a 7 seed into Buffalo in the wild card round to beat them, like, to me, that's the Broncos of these
Yeah.
three teams. I know
Sure.
people. I know a lot of people right now are way in on the Burrow bandwagon, and that nobody wants to see the Bengals. I'm sorry. Everyone wants to see the 8-8 Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs. Everyone, because the other half of their equation is one of the worst defenses in football. So yes, you've got Joe Burrow throwing a ton of touchdowns and all that stuff, but they can't stop anybody. They can't win games. They can't win close games. Their coaching's terrible. I don't think anybody is scared of the Bengals. So, that being said, if I'm rooting for a team to go into Buffalo and beat the Bills in the first round of the playoffs, I think that's a cold weather team
You know,
with
it's what happened last year. Yeah, at Buffalo.
uh
Now it was the regular season, but
oh,
Monday Night Football, the Broncos
yes,
beat the Bills
yes,
last year, and the
yes.
Bills were the 2 seed last year. They
Right.
weren't probably as
Now,
good, but they still.
didn't the
I
Broncos
mean,
blow that game? Didn't they have a
no,
field goal
the
and shanked it or
so
something, or the
so
Bills shanked it?
the
What
Bills
happened in that game?
blew that game by allowing. They basically ran the same blitz 2 times in a row, with the Broncos
Oh,
driving into field goal range,
you're
and
right.
Sean
Broncos won
McDermott
by two.
with a 1 point lead.
Mm-hmm.
Blew that by giving
Mm-hmm.
Russell Wilson the same coverage 2 times in a
I
row,
forgot
and the
about that.
Broncos
Yeah.
went down and scored the game-winning field goal. But to your point, and listen, the 2024 Bills are probably better than the 2023 Bills, even though
Sure.
they both got the 2 seed. But the 2024 Broncos are definitely much better than the
Clearly better.
2023 Broncos. And that Broncos defense last year that held the Bills to 22 points, that was the same defense that allowed 70 points to the Miami Dolphins like 3 weeks before that. So, and this is now statistically one of the best defenses in the NFL. I agree with you. I think like sending the Broncos to Buffalo is probably the best matchup there. Now, of course, Burrow has beaten the Bills in Buffalo a couple of years ago in the playoffs. It smoked them, but that was a
Sure.
very different
That
Bengals
was
defense.
it was.
So,
Every time anybody talks about the Bengals,
yeah, we're
they
talking about
have it
stuff
in
that
their mind
happened
that these are the
in
2021
ancient history,
Bengals.
right? And
Yes,
they're
those Bengals are long gone.
not. So, but you mentioned that it's risky, and it's risky because if the Broncos go
Yeah.
to Buffalo and unseat the Bills, they're
Yeah.
coming to Arrowhead as the 7 seed, and while it would be amazing and incredible to beat the Broncos in the playoffs and avenge our playoff loss, was it 98 playoffs? I think it was.
Yeah.
And even the score with the Broncos on our way to potentially three-peating. The flip side of that is that in the very unlikely event that the Broncos were to beat the Chiefs, that would be pretty hard to come back from. It doesn't matter that the Chiefs own the head-to-head over the Broncos all time. It doesn't matter that the Chiefs
No,
have more
none of it matters.
Super Bowl rings than the Broncos. All that would matter for all time is that the Broncos came into Arrowhead and ended the Chiefs' chance to three-peat. So it's a very risky proposition. It's a very risky proposition.
And it's the worst case scenario of these playoffs. That's the number one thing that can't happen
Sure, the
is the
Broncos
Broncos
beating the
beating the
Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Yes, yes,
Nothing
completely
else
agree.
that could happen in the playoffs is a worse scenario than that. I don't
Yeah,
care
you're
if
right.
they
No, that's true.
if the Chiefs were up 31 points in the Super Bowl and blew it to the Eagles or something like that and lost the game. That's not as big of a deal as the Chiefs losing a home game with a chance to three-peat in their first game in 3 weeks against the Broncos. That's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so yes. So the risk reward there of the Broncos getting into the playoffs is the chance for the Broncos to beat the Chiefs. Now, almost equally risky, almost, and maybe some would argue more risky, would be the Bengals doing the exact same thing. Is the
sure,
Bengals
sure,
making the playoffs,
sure.
beating the Bills, and then coming to Arrowhead as the 7 seed and unseating the Chiefs, and God forbid going on a run and winning the Super Bowl or
Yeah,
something. But
sure. Finishing the job.
even the Bengals coming into Burrowhead at that point and winning would be catastrophic. That would be
It would be
it
horrible.
would almost undo everything that's happened over the last 600 days or whatever, and that would be no good. So I'm going to reverse course and say my best case scenario is the Dolphins
Yeah,
because
sure. Yeah, we win. We knock the
because
we knock
that
the
way the
Broncos out of the playoffs with our backups, which would be
yes, which would be extremely
the
funny.
Dolphins knock the Bengals out of the playoffs,
Yes,
thanks to our win, and then the
Tyreek
Dolphins
gets
get.
another little
Yeah, sure.
playoff
That'd be
run,
fun.
which is fun. And if the Dolphins came into Arrowhead and beat us, I don't think anybody would be that shook up about it. I mean, they
And
that of
they
course it
also
would be
wouldn't because let's face it, we've seen what it looks like when the Dolphins come to
yes,
Arrowhead in
cold
January,
weather team.
and
Yeah.
it looks preposterous.
So yeah, so my preference is to not have the biggest risk on the board. Those two Dolphins, I mean, Bengals and Broncos represent the two worst case scenarios possible. And if those are eliminated, everything else that happens in the playoffs from that point on is fine. I'm not saying it's fine to not three-peat, but it kind of would be if you are talking about that or these two
Yeah.
scenarios like make me not want to even do the podcast anymore or not want to
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we
not want to
probably
be a
would have
Chiefs
to
fan
we'd have to fold
anymore.
up shop. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd have to delete all social media.
Yes.
We'd have to delete the apps on our phone, as
Yep.
some people do to cope with things that happen.
Oh,
Yeah, it would be tough.
join over 5 million fans that are already playing Underdog with their Pick'em game. You could win money by making entries with your favorite players. You could win up to 1,000 times your money. 1,000's pretty good by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns. You name the stat, you can pick them. Every dog deserves a second chance, a motto that I certainly appreciate from Underdog. And with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. We all know in football, those injuries are rough. Chiefs fans know that more than anybody. We love the vulture protection. If you designate a running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured by their backup running back, we will rescue your entry. Underdog will. So that's cool. So this week, I like to bet the Chiefs lines, not only because I know the most about them, but because you're all Chiefs fans, and I like to talk about the underdog bets that are related to the team that you all are definitely going to be watching on Sunday. But it's hard with not really knowing how the Chiefs are who all they're gonna play. We know that Patrick Mahomes is going to play, which is why Underdog is running a special this week for Carson Wentz higher on 0.5 total yards. They're basically saying if you bet on that, you're going to win. And
It's a
so
free leg.
it's free money, and who can pass up free money? So go ahead and go on Underdog this week and bet the Carson Wentz higher on 0.5 total yards. Download the app today. Use promo code KINGDOM, KINGDOM, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Download the app today. Promo code KINGDOM, $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Select higher or lower in your favorite players. Cash in on Underdog. Every player, every touchdown. Just select higher or lower on Underdog. Must be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369.
Well, it was a better Christmas this year than it was last year. Taylor, buddy, friend. The Chiefs were, for the second year in a row, playing on Christmas Day. And this time, instead of losing to a Raiders team that did not complete a pass after the first quarter, and instead of throwing back-to-back, or excuse me, blowing back-to-back scoop and score, pick sixes, whatever you want to call it, the Chiefs defeat the Steelers 29-10 in dominant fashion. I don't even think that the score here is reflective of how hard the Chiefs dominated this game. And I guess before we get into the Chiefs system, we should talk about the season that was. I'm sure we'll talk to our friend Randy about this next week too, but I posted that meme like a dozen times this season out of 15 wins. And it turns out the Chiefs were just good all along. And who knew? I mean, two dominant back-to-back wins over playoff teams, within 4 days of each other. The second one on the road against a team that, for 30 years, the Chiefs could not beat in Pittsburgh. A franchise record 15th win.
Yeah.
It seems like the Chiefs are pretty good, and I guess they just have been good all along, which, like, in some ways makes me feel like I've been a little bit victimized by the Chiefs. Like, they were just kind of fucking around, and it caused me very real stress. Like, their anxiety was not real. They knew that they were really good. They were playing all these close games. It probably, yes, it took probably a couple years off my life, but I feel freed by this result, and I feel encouraged by this result.
I think you could superimpose the Chiefs season on top of the meme. Not just each game, but literally
definitely
the
1,000%. Oh my God, we
and,
absolutely
and we just got to the last little sliver, which we might not even have gotten to that sliver yet. We might get to that sliver in the playoffs, but just the general sense that we have had as Chiefs fans. Hell, man, we created a new system this year.
We needed more than one new system. In fact, we needed
four. Right, yeah, we mixed them up, and the system that we created was not ha ha ha. We're 15-1. We're so much better than you guys. It was literally a system about how horrible everything was, and I mean, you said it. You feel kind of victimized by the Chiefs because at the same time, even though we were stressed and even though we were winning every game, but being annoyed at how things were going, I do think that in the back of most Chiefs fans' minds, certainly in ours, was the hopium that, oh, they're just going to flip it on when they need to.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned, it was either off air or maybe on a couple of our shows, but how, like, I don't know if I trusted that consciously.
Yeah, you were prepared to call it hopium. You were prepared to say, yes, I don't believe this.
Yes, because it doesn't really track with most
it doesn't make sense.
Sports teams. Like, most of the time, if you can turn it on, it's turned on all the time. And you just are really, really, really good, or you can't turn it on. And we've seen over the last couple of years that the Chiefs literally have turned it on when they needed to. And whether that's on third down or in the fourth quarter or in overtime or in the playoffs or down 10 or whatever the case may be, the worse the scenario is, or the more important the scenario is, the more likely it is that the Chiefs were going to succeed. And we knew that. We knew that was the DNA with this team. We knew it was the DNA with Patrick Mahomes specifically. A lot of other players on this team have come and gone, but the guys that have been there this whole time, that's what they do. And so these last 2 weeks, these last two games, certainly completely changed everything I felt about this team in a matter of, it was the 21st was 10 days ago. And the last 10 days between the Steelers and the Texans game and right now, I have gone from worried about a 13-1 team and worried that they've been getting away with some witch magic and they've been kind of do it, but when the playoff, to being like, oh my God, they're going to three-peat and it's going to be hilarious and they're just going to beat everybody. Like, I'm as confident now, I think, today as any point in the Patrick Mahomes era. Comparing to any other day of the Mahomes era, I think right now I feel the best about their chances of beating anybody in the field as I ever have.
And I think, I mean, to build on that, and this makes sense, but I think the Chiefs team we've seen the last couple of weeks might be the best Chiefs team we've seen in the Patrick Mahomes
Imagine
era,
that, dude.
Which is crazy. That. It is crazy because we have been bitching and moaning, and I thank God that our listeners put up with us and also share. I mean, let's face it, a lot of them share our mentality, right? Like, but sure. and I think a lot of Chiefs fans are that way. Now, I know not everybody is. I know there are people that are probably not listening to this podcast because they wouldn't get it, but probably people that interact with us on social media. A lot of them during games who don't follow me, just that that kept the faith all along. And they always knew that this was going to be the version of the Chiefs we were going to see the last couple of weeks of the regular season and God willing in the playoffs. And good for them. I'm happy for them, and I'm happy that they were able to do that. I was
Don't know how
not
they did it.
there until the last couple of weeks, and now here we are. We got to the point that we expected to be. If you went back before the season and said, I mean, you remember the episode that we did, the season preview episode that we did with Granny. We were talking about the possibility of an undefeated season on the way to the
Hmm.
three-peat, how dominant the offense was going to look, how the defense could look better than it did last year. And there were points in the season where all of that seemed completely ludicrous. Obviously, the undefeated season we made it pretty deep into the year, and the Chiefs did end the season with, I mean, they have a game left to play, but with one loss. I mean,
They almost did it.
and that was a close game. I mean, it ended up
Yeah, they
being
were
nine
probably a
nine
fourth and
points,
two
9 points on the
away from
scoreboard. But
winning that
yeah,
game.
exactly. I mean, a play or two away from beating the Bills in Buffalo, and we'd be talking about whether they would be playing starters this weekend because they'd be pushing for an undefeated 17-0 season on their way to a potential three-peat. Here we are. We got all of it in the end, and this despite the fact that they had some horrible, ugly injuries. I mean, think about the game against the Chargers where Mahomes throws a pick and he was leading the league in interceptions, and that interception caused him to take out Rashee Rice's knee, and the
Forever.
offense just looked brutal for months after that. Mahomes had a negative touchdown interception ratio for like
Yeah.
half the year,
Yeah.
like half the year, dude.
Yeah.
And here we are. Here we are.
It's been such a weird ride. I would almost you brought up the undefeated season, and that's something that we haven't talked about really since, I mean, at all since the Bills game. And I wonder if the Chiefs are better off if you are going into right now, because first of all, they would have been talking about they would have locked up the 1 seed last week before the
Sure.
Steelers
Right.
game, even
Right.
if the Bills kept winning by beating the Bills, because it would have
Yep.
been a much bigger gulf. So we would have been talking about the last couple weeks about how much rest do you give them, and then let's say they went through the regular season. Let's say they play their starters this week or not, but they beat the Broncos and they go 17-0. The pressure that we talked about that would have been on this team to
Yeah.
both three-peat and go undefeated, because you couldn't do one without the other once you got to
Right.
17-0.
Right.
You'd have to get both or none. And I don't know if they could have done it. Now, maybe they could have, but I almost think that going in with just the one loss is like the most freeing, best
It's pretty
version of
ideal.
this team that, is just going to go out there and do what they've been doing. So that part is there. You mentioned that you thought that this was maybe the best version of the Chiefs in the Mahomes era, and this just reminded me of something I found out last week, which is that the Chiefs, after beating the Steelers, are 86-19 in their last 105 games, which goes back to the first win after Mahomes' knee injury. After he came back from the knee injury, so he comes back against the Titans and they lose that game, and then after that game they have gone 86-19, which is the best 105 game stretch in NFL history by any team ever.
Shit.
So, the Patriots that won 3 out of 4 Super Bowls and went undefeated in 2007 and all that stuff, their peak streak was 85-20, and the Chiefs are 86-19. So if the best version of the Chiefs is this version, and the last 105 games is the best team ever, then, I mean, good luck. Good luck to anybody else trying to beat this version of the best team ever. Because if the best version of the best team ever is the version that we're currently looking at, it's pretty damn good. That's a pretty good recipe to go out there and win some football games.
It is extremely good. And you know what is extremely good is that this game got us back to the system that we have been using for so long, the Chiefs system. It worked again. We'll give this a quick go because it's New Year's Eve. You guys have got stuff to do. We got stuff to do or stuff to not do. But we got a classic Chiefs system game again, finally. And it's fitting that this is the balance has been restored. The Chiefs system is back.
Yeah, it was almost like suspiciously easy. Like, this is one of those games that you look back on and you're like, all right, so we're going to start off and we're going to create some drama, right? We're going to see. And there's no Chris Jones in this game, which, starts off a little apprehensive about going up against a team without your best defender. They've got they've got TJ Watt.
Well, they had JJ Watt too.
They got one of the Watts. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, JJ Watt was up in the booth cheering for his brother every play and talking about holds that didn't exist and all that stuff. But you've got TJ Watt, who's a defensive player of the year, going up against a, now a not quite a makeshift offensive line, but certainly not the ideal version of the offensive line that the Chiefs envisioned to start the year, which of course includes Joe Tooney kicking out to tackle and Caliendo in a guard and all that stuff. And Juwan Taylor banged up, and you know,
Sure, but Jawan Taylor with and then TJ Watt was banged up too, but Jawan Taylor with a significant knee
yeah,
injury playing on 4 days rest against TJ Watt.
yeah, it's a tough ask. So you've got no Chris Jones. You've got a tough matchup with TJ Watt. You've got the Bills hot on the heels of the Chiefs. If the Chiefs do not win this game, I think we're all pretty damn worried about what's going to happen, and that would mean that the Chiefs would have to play against Denver to just get the 1 seed and all that stuff. So if the Chiefs blow this one, they're also blowing their chance to rest in the final week and get healthy and all that stuff. And they're on the road against a team that is a playoff team. I mean, this is not an easy task by any means. So they created the drama, they set it all up. It was Christmas Day. You already talked about the fact that the last time they played on Christmas Day, they blew it big time against the Raiders. I mean, one
Boy,
of the
did they.
worst games in franchise history, that game was. It was an absolute abject disaster. And so you've got people with PTSD about, can the Chiefs really ruin 2 Christmases in a row for us? And it was on Netflix, and we didn't know if Netflix was going to hold up and was going to be able to stream properly because they had the
Sure.
Tyson fight
Yeah.
where everything was all horrible. And so there was a lot of drama before this game even kicked off, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely. And I mean, you said it, the importance of this game. It loomed extremely large. And to be on Christmas in a spotlight game against another playoff team, I mean, this is the second straight year for the Chiefs. And last year, 31 other fan bases had a very Merry Christmas, and
Ah, no
fans of the
kidding.
Kansas City Chiefs had a
Yes.
terrible Christmas, completely, completely ruined Christmas for everybody who was a Chiefs fan that watched that game. But yeah, I would say drama definitely created.
Well, so then you get to H, and normally they have to handle adversity little chunks at a time, and they something comes up and they have to get over it. This is basically the whole game was H. We could just make this one, but put an H on it, mark it for Hornet, and just send it on its way. It starts off with a Steelers punt on a 3-and-out. Then the Chiefs drive down the field. They get a really nice Xavier Worthy open touchdown where he's doing a crosser, basically looked like Rashee Rice on the play. Uh, Steelers punt again after only one first down. And then the Chiefs march right back down and find Justin Watson in the corner of the end zone for another touchdown. Good script. Doesn't seem too adverse of a situation to me. Chiefs are handling it as well as you could expect. Moment doesn't seem too big for them. The matchup doesn't seem like a problem. Mahomes is kept upright. Everything that they were asked to do going into this game, 4 days rest, a quick turnaround, all the things that we just talked about in Create Drama, they handled all of that with flying colors to start the game.
Yeah, they sure did. And this is what we've been begging the
Yes.
2024 Chiefs to do
Yeah.
essentially the entire year, which
Yep.
is go out
Start
and
hot.
put a team that is worse than you in a 2 touchdown hole and just let them know that no matter that there's no point in trying this game, right? Like because we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
win, we are better than you. You might as well just phone it in for the next 3 quarters and go home and enjoy Christmas with your family if you can, because
Right.
we are going to win this game. Just give up now, surrender without a fight because this game is ours. And it took the last game of the season the starters will play in, and got to have a game really for the Chiefs, and they went out and did it. It's handling
They
adversity.
did. They did. They handled it extremely well. And now you get to I, inspiring some hope. And we're all feeling the Christmas cheer. We're all feeling inspired for everything that we've seen. And, the Steelers get the ball back and they try and make something happen. They throw a long pass to George Pickens, finally their first big play of the game for 41 yards. And they're in business. And they get down to the 8 and they score a touchdown, but they held on the play. Pretty easy hold call there that nullifies it and drops them back to the 18. And the very next play after the hold, Russ just has a Russ moment. Just fires it deep middle into double coverage. Justin Reed says, "Thank you. I will take that gift, that Christmas gift." And the Chiefs get another turnover. And we've talked about all the aspects of this team that we've asked for them to be better at, whether that's you know red zone scoring or whatever it was. A big one was the takeaways. The team was just not taking the ball away up until a couple weeks ago. And I mean, in a bad way. They had 1 or 0 in, I think, whatever it was, 7 straight games or something. It was not a good run. And now they are starting to come in bunches again, which again, Steve Spagnuolo, late in the
Hmm.
year, not
Yep.
surprised by that
Right.
by any means, but Justin Reed jumps out, snatches the ball, inspires hope in all of us, and we're thinking, all right, 1 seed is looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, and this play has gotten a lot of attention because George Pickens didn't run a route. It was supposed to be a forward verts concept, and he just kind of gave up on the route. And Justin Reed said,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, if I don't have to guard you over the top, I'm just going to go,
Gonna guard
I'll
another
go
guy.
freelance somewhere else, and I'll just get myself a nice, tasty little pick." I don't want to say that the Chiefs made the right decision not drafting George Pickens because they drafted Sky Moore, who
Right.
is terrible. But that play was a pretty neat little illustration of why the Chiefs didn't draft George Pickens. Now, don't get me wrong, I would still be thrilled to have George Pickens on my team, but that's the kind of bozo stuff that the Chiefs just do not like to have. And if you really wanted to extrapolate and draw some sweeping narrative point from this game, which I don't, but I will play devil's advocate here.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really hard to look at because both of these franchises are Tiffany franchises in the NFL. They and the Steelers, they've had 3 head coaches in 65 years or whatever it is. They've won the second most Super Bowls. They have, or I guess tied for the most, 6.
Mm-hmm.
With the Patriots, this is a team that has never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin, who's been the coach there now for almost 2 decades. Uh, so what's the difference between this team and the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs? And of course, it's the quarterback. That obviously is a big part of it. Um, but you could almost look at the organizational philosophy, and you could, if you wanted to, make some sort of general overarching point about this specific play and say this is the difference between one great franchise and another great franchise. The Steelers are a great franchise. They're not a great team. They have been a
Yeah.
very good team the last several years, but they've never been a great team. And great teams, the player that's supposed to run that route, even if he's not getting the ball, is going to give full effort. And
Yeah.
he's going to sell that route. And maybe Russ doesn't throw an interception, and maybe the Steelers end up scoring a touchdown on that game. And maybe the entire game looks different after that. But it didn't because one of these teams is a great team and one of these teams is a great franchise, but only a very good team at this point in time.
Yeah, the Steelers are a classic high floor, low ceiling team.
Yeah.
They're not going to
Yeah.
go out there and win 3 games a year. That's been the Tomlin calling card has been that he's had every year over 500 of his whole time there, which is outstanding and extremely hard to do. But at the same time, you got to go out there and win some of these big games against the big boys more often than they do. So that was Inspire Hope, Justin Reed pick. We get to eat, engage physically. We'll fast forward in the game a little bit. It's the fourth quarter. The Chiefs are up 22-10, and Pat Fryermuth, when they're trying to come back, throwing down 2 touchdowns, you get a score, stop, score, you're on top. But Pat Fryermuth catches the ball. Trent McDuffie just does Trent McDuffie stuff, engages physically with him, rips the ball out. Chiefs recover, get another turnover. Once again, much like the Inspire Hope, they come in bunches when this starts to happen. And this was a really physical play. We could have also probably lumped in the Kareem Hunt touchdown run that put them up 22-10, first and goal at the 2, where he just powers his way in and shows those Kareem Hunt bona fides that we've come to love for a short yardage back. So he engaged physically at the goal line. Chiefs are up 12. Steelers get the ball back, and 3 plays later, Pat Fryermuth fumbles the ball, and Nick Bolton jumps on it, and the Chiefs are back up. And engaging physically has kind of been set aside as like a defensive aspect of the system. This is really when
Yeah.
you talk about either short yardage running or taking the ball away. Those are or sacking the quarterback. Those are like your big time engaging physically plays. And I mean, the Chiefs also got to Russ 5 times in this game,
Yeah.
and
Without Chris Jones.
without Chris Jones, which is just you know. I forget who tweeted it. I'm sure probably several people have by now, but the turnaround this team has had in the pressure rate with Charles Omenihu back in the
Yeah.
fold has
Yeah.
been night and day. I mean, that guy really, really gets after it. And, shout out to everybody on the Chiefs that picked up a sack in this game. And of course, that's 2 from Mike Dana, 1 from FAU, who's kind of a player now. He's their
Yeah.
first round
Right.
pick is actually maybe he's a good little player. Turk Wharton got 1, and George Karlaftis got 1. just an outstanding effort by the D line and a really physical game. You know, the Steelers, if you think of just one team in the NFL that's like the most physical team every year, it's pretty
Sure.
much the Steelers. Like that's the calling card, and especially playing in Pittsburgh against like a ball control type of. I mean, this was a great way for the Chiefs to show, hey, actually, we are really, really physically tough as well. They were awesome in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, you said the Steelers, but that is sort of a calling card of the entire AFC North. This is their
Yes.
this is their whole deal, their whole shtick, to the point where some people who may be fans of the Cincinnati Bengals would tweet things out like the Chiefs would never survive in the AFC North because, I mean, it's so physical to play in the AFC North. How could the Chiefs ever do it? Well, since this individual tweeted out that the Chiefs would never survive in the AFC North, October of 2023, the Chiefs have not lost to the AFC North. Okay, they're 6-0 against the AFC North. Now, I did have Bengals fans in my mentions saying like, "Oh, it's different if you're in the division." Oh, is it? Is it really? Would it be like the AFC West where the Chiefs are playing these hard division games against division opponents? I mean, divisional games, they're just harder. Oh, wait, the Chiefs are like 27-3 against the AFC West in the Patrick Mahomes era. I
Right.
mean, get out of here. Miss me with that stuff. Yes, the Chiefs can play against physical teams, and yes, the Chiefs can beat the shit out of physical teams. They did in this game.
They did. They absolutely did. So it was a nice big classic E. And so then we get to the classic F, finishing strong. They've finished strong basically since the opening kickoff in this game. But just to wrap things up, the Chiefs getting the ball back after the fumble with 12:38 to go in the fourth quarter. Only had a short field, 34-yard field, which, by the way, doesn't happen very often to these Chiefs where they get a gifted
Yeah.
possession. Almost every possession they have starts, even if the team's taking the ball away, it tends to be a deep into Chiefs territory takeaway by this team. It's just not very often where they've given the offense a short field. And the offense took full advantage of it. Travis Kelce finds himself wide open in the end zone, and Patrick Mahomes knows exactly what to do with that. And he gets his third passing touchdown of the day. And I mean, Mahomes against the Steelers is just a joke of a box score every single time in his whole career. I broke it down pretty funny just to total up all of what he's done, and so I'll just go over his four games in his career versus the Steelers after this touchdown pass. 4-0 record, pretty good. 37.3 points per game, which they only finished with 29 in this game, so that
Sure.
actually dropped down after this one.
Yeah.
This is after this game, so it was probably up around 40 before this. 77.8 completion percentage, almost 80, ridiculous. 1,300 yards, which is 327 per game, 17 touchdown passes, 4.25 per game. This is 4 games where he's had 17. Of course, he had the
That's
six,
crazy.
but he's also it's three minimum every single time. He threw one measly pick, and that was the pick six against TJ Watt to start the playoff game, the wild card game in 2021, which the Chiefs then proceeded to put up 42 on him. And the funniest one to me is 143.5 quarterback rating.
Ha.
158.3 is perfect. He's basically a perfect quarterback when he plays this team. It is just a hilarious breakdown. So finishing strong was, of course, Mahomes putting the finishing touch on the Steelers, going up 29-10 with 12 minutes to go. We all knew it was over. It was just a matter of clocking the rest of this game out. But talk about just a not letting this team even think about getting back in the game. They were awesome.
Yeah. You know who didn't finish strong despite catching the franchise record-breaking touchdown is Travis Kelce, who I got to give him props for the attempt to dunk the ball, a la Tony Gonzalez, the great Tony Gonzalez, whom he passed, obviously, to set the Chiefs franchise touchdown record. Those legs are shot, man.
Yeah.
His vertical is definitely nowhere
It's a
near
horizontal.
what Tony's. Yeah, exactly. It's nowhere near what Tony's was even late into Tony's career. Now Tony was a collegiate basketball player.
Right.
That's why he was dunking the football as a celebration. But I will give Travis props for the effort. For effort, he did get it over the crossbar, of course. It wasn't quite a full on. It was more of a dink than a dunk. Let's just put it that way.
What's funny is someone posted all 77 Kelsey career touchdowns, a video. It was a very fun 20-minute or so video that I
Yeah,
saw.
long one.
Yeah, and he dunked it a couple times in his career. I think the first time he did it was either in 14 or 15, but I was blown away. He got up. I mean, he
Yeah.
slammed
Oh, I
that
bet.
thing.
I
And
bet
I
he
was
did.
like, oh, young baby Kelsey. Like, it was
Yeah.
such a difference than this one where he was just like, I know I have to dunk this because it's the Tony record, but like my heart's not in it. So
Yeah, yeah.
so Tony
The
didn't
body,
finish. I mean,
the mind was willing, but the body was not.
correct. So Trav didn't finish strong on the dunk, but the Chiefs did. They get to separate entirely. I thought this call by the Steelers was kind of interesting from a game management perspective. They were down 19, 4th and 20 on the Chiefs' 42-yard line. Now, if you're trying to win this game, you have to score 2 touchdowns and some more and some help. You're down 19, so ideally 2 touchdowns and a field goal, or in 2-point conversions. That's 19. 16 on the touchdowns, 3 more for the field goal.
Sure.
So from the 42 on 4th and 20, you've got Chris Boswell's an unbelievable kicker, probably the best
Yeah,
kicker in the
really
NFL
good.
this year, or certainly close to it. 50-yarders are nothing to him. He's got a big leg. I would have kicked a 59-yarder and cut a 19-point lead to 16, and with 10 minutes to go, either onside it at that point or try and crank it up. But I don't know if the Steelers were just kind of over it or whatever, but it was 4th and 20 and they decided to throw for it. And it was a deep left shot to George Pickens that was incomplete, and then little double thumbs down taunt by the Chiefs. Who was the DB that did the taunt? Was it now I'll have to look this up.
Oh, I wanted to say, wasn't it
Here we
was it Roland
go.
Wallace?
Downs. It was Jaden Hicks. Of course, it was Jaden Hicks. Yeah, yeah. So
Oh, that's
Hicks
right.
was on the coverage, and he double thumbs downs him. And I thought at first that I forgot it'd be a change of possession, a post play taunt
Sure.
penalty. I thought they were going to
Or
call
when
him
the flag
for.
comes out that they were going to call him
That's
for
what I mean.
PI.
Or
Yeah,
DPI.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So Chiefs got the ball back. That was fine. And then just to kind of compound it, we're unseparated entirely. At the end of the game, I just thought it was funny. The Steelers were driving. It was 37 seconds left. They had 1st and 10 on the 19. They had all 3 timeouts left. And then they just ran a couple plays, didn't call timeouts. They had 1st and goal at the 8 with 2 seconds left. But there was a false start with a running clock. And instead of even taking the timeout to not have the 10-second runoff, Tomlin just said, whatever, man, we're down 19. We're just going to end the game. But I just thought it was a funny, they really had some chances in the fourth quarter in a couple drives to at least make things more interesting than what they did, but they really didn't seem to have much of an interest in that. Chiefs separated entirely, win the game 29-10, win their franchise record 15th game of the season. Of course, even if they don't win this Denver game, they've never won 15 games in a regular season before. They're setting themselves up if they win the Super Bowl. I know that's a little bit farther down the road, but if they do, it would be their 18th, or if they win on Sunday, their 19th win of the year, which of course only the Patriots have gone 18-1. They're the only team that's won 18 games in a year. So pretty remarkable situation for the 2-time defending Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and I mean, if they win on Sunday over the Broncos, they'll be the second team ever to win 16 games in the regular
Correct.
season. The Patriots are the only other team that's done that. Obviously, they went 16-0. Chiefs would be 16-1, but we haven't had any team in the 17-game era come close to winning 16
No.
games. I think actually the Chiefs might be the first team to win 15 games in the
Since
17
the
game
Panthers,
schedule.
since the 2015
yeah, right.
Panthers.
Yeah,
so it's been almost 10 years since anybody's won 15.
yeah, so I mean, even with the extra game, the Chiefs are the first team in the 17 game schedule to win 15 games. So pretty amazing by the Chiefs to separate entirely there. Let's hit our awards here, and then we'll go enjoy our New Year's Eve. For those of you who might be new to the show, we have 3 types of awards. We have our 5-star men, who are screaming out through their play on the field. I'm a 5-star man. We have our trash men.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
Who are eating garbage all over the field, just the worst players in the game. And then we have our wild cards.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
Who, of course, are capable of anything. I will start with 5-star man, and boy, I love these kinds of games because we each give out 1 award apiece, and it was very hard to narrow this down to 1 5-star man for me and 1 5-star man for you. I will take Patrick Mahomes, whose success against the Steelers you have already documented. 29 of 38 in this game for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I mean, this is with the Chiefs kind of cruising for a lot of the game. The yardage could have been a lot higher if the Chiefs hadn't gotten the benefit of a few short fields in this one. I mean, just a dominant performance by him. 10 days or whatever removed from a high ankle sprain, and
How about no sacks?
no sacks. He's something else, man. He's put it all together. We talked about how he can play any style, and for a while his style was I'm going to throw a lot of picks, but I'm not going to take any sacks. Then it was, I'm going to take a lot of sacks, but I'm not going to throw any picks. And now it's like, I'm not going to
I'm not
throw
gonna
any
do
picks
either.
or take any sacks. And I'm just going to be the best quarterback there ever was. And, pretty nice little situation for Patrick Mahomes, the 5-star. I'll throw out some honorable mentions. I mean, you mentioned Mike Dana had a couple sacks in this game.
Yeah.
George Karlaftis, I don't know how many times we've awarded him this year, but he's had a really, really strong season.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
kind
awesome.
of flown under the radar a little bit, I feel like, but like he's way up there in pressure rate this year. He's had 8 sacks. Really strong performance by him. We had Trent McDuffie, you already mentioned, with the strip. A lot of candidates. So I'm very curious to see where you go with this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the guy that breaks a franchise record. Anytime
Yeah, sure. Makes sense.
you've got a kind of big moment like that, you should be awarded the 5-star. So of course Travis Kelce. I know we just gave him some crap for not being able to dunk that ball, but I mean, he's just so reliable and
Mr. Chief.
so
And I
he's
mean,
Mr.
he had 84 yards in this game too. He looked
Yes,
great.
he was the best offensive weapon that the Chiefs had in this game. And you know, I I know that I know he's struggled this year. He's had some games where he hasn't shown up, and at the same time, now it's late in the year and they needed that game to be able to rest and recover and lock in the 1 seed, and it just feels like that's the version of Trav. Now again, we'll see. But that's the version of Trav that I think we're going to get in the playoffs, which is the version that you need to go win the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are not going to go three-peat without Travis Kelce being Travis Kelce. I'm not saying he needs to have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns every game, but reliable third down target and a guy that Mahomes is going to go to pretty consistently. And that's what he's been the last couple weeks. Speaking of the last couple weeks, before we move on to the next award, I do want to also point out another little nugget, which is that the Chiefs completed their 6th game in a row without a turnover. This is the second longest streak in NFL history of games without a turnover, behind the 7 games that the 2010 Patriots did. So the Chiefs are at
Wow.
6. They're one more game to go without a turnover. No other team. This is also the 4th time that the Chiefs have gone 5 or more games without a turnover, and no other team in NFL history of any other franchise has done that more than 1 time. And the
Wow.
Chiefs have done it 4 times, 3 times in the Andy Reid era. So
Sure.
in 2015 they did it with Alex Smith. In 2017 they did it with Alex Smith. Of course, if you're going to have a team that doesn't turn the ball over,
Yeah, right.
got to have a guy like Alex Smith, or then of course this team with Patrick Mahomes. And then in '97, the Chiefs also went 5 in a row. I just thought that was ridiculous that there are only 6 other teams that have done it once, and the Chiefs have done it 4 times. So they haven't turned the ball over. They've done a great job. They also have won their 6th game in a row, and they have 21 stretches, different unique 6-game stretches where they're 6-0 since 2019. No one else has more than 14 of those. San Francisco has 14 of those.
Okay.
Baltimore's in
Sure.
3rd place with 10, and the Chiefs have 21. So
That's
they're
pretty good.
they're just completely dominating. I'll get to my trash man now, and of course I'm not going to talk about the Chiefs like that and then trash one of the Chiefs. So I'm going with Russell Wilson. Easy guy for us to bag on. Of course, his time in Denver was very, very funny and cool, and we loved every moment of it. But when he became a Steeler, I kind of wasn't sure what to think about Russ. I kind of thought at one point, I mean, obviously, I think he's a weirdo and cheesy, and
Sure,
I have
yeah.
no problem with him
Right.
being bad. But I don't dislike him in the way I dislike Aaron Rodgers or someone or even Joe Burrow. Like, I just think Russ is a weirdo, but I wasn't sure if I wanted him to succeed, which would make the Broncos look like idiots, or fail because Russ is an idiot. And he kind of did both this year. He was kind of the
Yes.
best of both
Yes.
worlds.
Oh my God, he did.
He started off and he was red hot and he won 5 of his first 6 starts with the Broncos, and with the Steelers, and everyone just thought, man, Broncos kicked him to the curb, and turns out he's still got a lot left in the tank. And then the real Russ shows up, and over the last couple weeks, the Steelers have been bad. They are limping into the playoffs regardless of what they do this week. They had the division, they had everything the way they wanted, and then they just couldn't win any games. And Russ in this game started off their very first possession, put the ball on the ground. He jumped on it, but it was a bad, like, trying to use the ball to brace himself and just drop the ball. And then threw that pick to Justin Reed, which was really bad. And he had 200 yards passing in a game that he was down pretty much from the get-go and needed to throw the ball a lot. And he just did. He got sacked 5 times. He held onto the ball way too long. Wasn't any part of his game that looked like it wasn't replaceable by an average quarterback. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers use a lot more Justin Fields. And I was a little surprised that they didn't even bring him in for a play in this game. He didn't even
Sure.
have a token little 3rd-and-1 conversion or whatever. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Pittsburgh Steelers struggle out of the gate this week on Saturday. I wouldn't be surprised if Russ gets benched. He just hasn't been good lately. He's my trash man. It was great to have a big game and have Russ on the other side of it because you just knew the Chiefs were going to be okay.
I was going to pick a Chief, and it was slim pickings. You already said it. I was going to pick Nico Remigio, who had a fumble on a return that the Chiefs recovered, and that was probably the worst thing that happened to the Chiefs in this game. Like, you almost lost a fumble, and you almost turned the ball over.
Almost. Something was almost bad.
They didn't, but I'm going to pivot to a Steelers adjacent figure, and that's J.J. Watt. JJ Watt we've already bagged on him once, but he deserves to be a trash man for his performance in the booth in this game. First of all, JJ, I get that your version of what a hold is different from what an offensive lineman's version of a hold is, or from objectively what a hold is. But I mean, for the first time in a long time, I feel like we can say Jawan Taylor got hosed on some of the holding calls in this game. TJ Watt was just getting his ass crunched and then fell down and getting holding calls for that. And JJ essentially was essentially just giving commentary on what was happening with TJ Watt facing up against Juwan Taylor. Guess what? No pressures and no sacks in this game. And the Chiefs played an extremely clean game. I guess I can give it to the Watt brothers, JJ and TJ. Their commentary and their play on the field was trash. Let's move to the wild cards and close this out here. Sometimes the wild card is an unexpected performance or an up and down performance. Sometimes it's just, I guess this is maybe sort of unexpected, but at this point, it's not really. I'm going to give it to Joe Thuney. And listen, he could be a 5-star man either of the last couple of weeks. This is a guy that obviously is playing out of position. He is a guy that the reason he came into the league as a guard, the reason he's been a guard his entire career is because he doesn't have that prototypical length that you want out of a tackle, and especially a left tackle that's going to be protecting, the best quarterback in the league's blind side. And yet, Joe Thuney, when the Chiefs had nowhere else to turn to, they tried, Kingsley Suamataia. He flamed out. They tried Wanya Morris. He wasn't good, and he got hurt. They brought in DJ Humphries, who played one game and then pulled his hamstring in that game, didn't finish that game, hoping he could rekindle some of that, former All-Pro magic. And none of that worked, and it left them with Joe Thuney, their left guard. And he's done this before. He had to kick out a couple years ago to fill in for Orlando Brown when he tweaked something in warmups. And he's been really good. I mean, the first game I know was uneven. People were saying, oh, look at his PFF grade. Look at the pressures he's giving up. And that was against the Browns. And, even in that game, we talked about it afterwards. I think he was my wild card pick after that game. Sure, he gave up a lot of pressures, but he was losing slow. And he was giving
him time.
He was giving Pat a chance. And that's all you need to give the best quarterback in the world is a chance. That doesn't mean that you need to win every rep. It doesn't mean that you are going to, dominate the run game. He hasn't been great in that regard compared to some of the other guys the Chiefs had out there, but he gives your quarterback a chance. And more importantly, he doesn't give up those instant sacks. When we've seen probably this year, Mahomes has taken more sacks where he had no chance to avoid a sack than I've seen him take in his entire career combined, probably.
Agreed.
Right? Like
because the left tackle.
Because the left tackle was getting beat, or occasionally the right tackle was getting beat so fast that the best quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history in avoiding sacks, can do nothing to avoid a sack. And Joe Thuney has completely solved that problem. That has not happened. It's not even come close to happening since Joe Thuney moved into the left tackle spot. That is a wild card in the best possible way a wild card can wild card Joe Thuney. Shout out.
I want to say something about Joe Thuney. Do you know how many players in NFL history will have more Super Bowls than him if the Chiefs three-peat?
It's like, it would be Brady. Is that it?
That is it. That's the list.
I was
Joe
thinking,
Thuney has 4 Super Bowls.
Crazy.
Two him. So he won 1 with the Patriots, and 2 with the Patriots and 2 with the Chiefs. Now, he didn't play in last year's Super Bowl, famously, because he got hurt right before it, and Nick Allegretti had to come in and be big boy Gretty and step in. But he gets a ring. He was on the team, of course, and so he has 4 rings. Only 2 players have 5 or more rings ever. Charles Haley was a defensive back or defensive end for the Niners and Cowboys. He got 2 with the Niners, went to the Cowboys, got all 3 on the Cowboys. So he's got 5 individually, and Brady has 7 individually. Those are the only 2 guys with more than 4.
That's
so
crazy.
If the Chiefs three-peat, Joe Thuney is in a list of Tom Brady and one other player as most championships ever. I mean, I just think that's a remarkable achievement for him. Of course, he's got to get that 5th one, which we'll do everything we can to make it happen. But super wild card behavior there by Thuney to just come in and hold down a position. He's an all-pro left guard, and he just kicks over to tackle and is awesome at it.
And let me say too, I mean, like that stat that you just shared, I mean, like that's a Hall of Famer, right? Like
yes.
you can look at a guy who's an all-pro. It's hard to distinguish yourself as an offensive guard. Okay. It's
Absolutely.
really hard. It's maybe the hardest position in football to distinguish yourself at. You're not getting any statistics. You're not, out at the edge of the line. You're not the one snapping the ball, know, like
you're not getting paid like a tackle. You're
right.
Not getting,
and
I mean, there's no profile of a guard at all.
This is how you do it. Like if you were to say, how do you get into the Hall of Fame as an offensive guard? It's like, go play like a half dozen games as a dominant left tackle and three-peat in Super Bowls and win more rings than anybody else. Like he might be the greatest guard ever at that point, right? Like
absolutely. Who
could have a better career than that as an offensive guard?
No, you're exactly right. And he might win his 5th championship as a tackle. That's how good of a guard he is.
Sure,
I
right,
mean,
exactly.
He's an unbelievable professional. He's an unbelievable addition. I mean, when they brought him in, we knew he was going to be good. He was great with the Patriots before he was ever a Chief. And he's been nothing short of the best guard in football since he's gotten here. So just shout out again to Joe Thuney. This won't be the last time we shout him out. He might have saved the Chiefs season. I know that's a little dramatic.
I know.
But if they didn't have him available to kick out to left tackle, I'm not sure the rest of what we think is possible would actually have been possible.
I mean, is it a coincidence that the offense has looked completely fixed since he moved to left tackle? I mean, like
it's not at all. The addition of Hollywood Brown plus Joe Thuney being to left tackle has made this team just hilariously unbeatable, and we're obviously here for it. I'll wrap us up with wild card. I'm just gonna go Justin Watson. They hit on a deep ball for the first time since the Xavier Worthy touchdown in week 4.
49 yards.
This one was 40. Yeah. And he caught a touchdown. He caught a little crossing route touchdown in the corner of the end zone on the 2nd touchdown of the game. So Justin Watson showed up. You never know if Justin Watson's going to have a game where he has a big catch or not. I do always trust him. If the target is Justin Watson, I don't feel bad about it. It's just that, it's a deep enough team now that he doesn't quite get the love that he did before, when his only competition was Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. Things were a lot easier for Justin Watson to be highlighted. But he was good. So, shout out for the wild card there.
Yeah. And, if that deep ball's hitting, the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl again. I mean, like if they're going to consistently hit on deep passes in the playoffs, then good luck. We will be back next week with our friend Randy Gisarli to look forward to the playoffs. Happy New Year. We will see you next year.